All right. Do you want to introduce yourself a little bit and we'll get started?
Sure. So Seth Levin, one of the co-founders of the Levin team here in Manhattan. I've been in the business since early 2000s. This is my 18th year in the business. Fourth year at Keller Williams. Prior to that, 14 years at Douglas Allen, where I was in their Greenwich Village office, and I was ranked in the top 20, when I left, and for previous years before that, been ranked in the top 1% of real estate agents in the country for about a decade at this point, maybe 8 or 9 years. And, since coming over, we were sales team of the year every year for our first 3. And then last year, we actually designed, shrunk the team, and we were the number 2 team in locally. And I always sort of start by saying that, there's certainly tactics that I hope that I'm conveying that are able to be learned, but so much of the way that I negotiate was just intrinsic to me, and it was paying attention to what I was doing that helped me design this class. When I was, even early in my career, I actually came from operating my own business in the importation of museum quality gemstones, which is, obviously you don't hear that very often. But I was negotiating with people from Nigeria, from India, from Afghanistan, from Brazil, from China. And one thing I was constantly noticing was that everybody has an idea of where they want to get to in negotiation, but not everybody takes the same path. Also, some people are certainly better negotiators than others. I come from a family of attorneys. I'm the lone non-attorney, but everybody said that I should have been an attorney. But I was negotiating from a young age in every situation with my teachers, with my parents. And one of my earliest memories from school is a teacher telling me, "Seth, it's not up for negotiation." And I remember saying, "But I'm not negotiating." What I should have said was, "I'm not going to win this negotiation, but I'm certainly negotiating," because everything is a negotiation. And that's what I've learned. It's not just in business, it's life, but particularly in our business, everything is a negotiation. I'm negotiating from the second we open our mouth and the second we listen to people. Because first and foremost, as real estate agents, we're detectives more than anything else. We're trying to tap into the motivations of our clients to better serve them. We're trying to tap into the motivations of the person on the other side of the transaction. We're trying to hear clues as to what the other party is willing to do or why they're willing to do it. And we use that information to devise a strategy. But we're always trying to discern the information. So I mentioned that I'm from a family of attorneys. My older brother, not my oldest, my second older brother, he is a general counsel of publicly traded companies right now of a $1 billion startup. Prior to this, he was the general counsel of a huge publicly traded company that merged with another huge publicly traded company. And we happened to be on the golf course last summer, or 2 summers ago, sorry, when he had to pick up a call. It was the general counsel from the other publicly traded company, and he sat out a couple holes, and we were driving around, and I was listening to him. And when he got off the phone, I remember saying, "The other guy said this, that's why you said that. You had the ability to do this, which is why you said that." And he said, "Oh, did you hear what was going on?" I said, "No, I just knew the way that you responded because I have the exact same negotiation tact." So it's intrinsic. I have it. I've always been a negotiator, but I've been coaching people in my different offices for 17 years, and people around the country, even top Keller Williams agents, will call me, ask me questions. And, I have scripts, and I have times when you pause, times when you ask questions that anybody can do. It's not something that can't be learned. But some people just have natural ability to read between the lines when people are speaking, but there's ways to figure out what's going on. And even if you don't know what's going on, there's questions to ask. We're always trying to listen more than we speak. We're asking questions. We're trying to understand what's going on the other side. So let me just scroll down. So we sort of got into that. There's natural versus learned. And I don't think, like, I play a lot of golf. I wish I can go back in time and take lessons as opposed to having my natural ability lead the way. So I do think that there's oftentimes advantages to being sort of a blank canvas and learning things. You'll learn to do them the right way. So having, strong negotiation skills obviously is really important, particularly in the line of work that we've all chosen, which is real estate brokering. The first negotiation that I think is hugely important to real estate agents is the commission negotiation when you're talking to a seller. Here in New York, we really strive for 6%. I very rarely go to 5%, and it has to be something at a very high price point. Or right now I'm doing something at 5.5% where I'm offering 3% to the buyer's agent, taking 2.5% because they're selling, they're buying, and then they have another apartment that they're selling. So there's certain times that I will, but in general, I fight for 3% for our side, 6% for the total. Because if you think about it, if you go into every negotiation with a seller and you're willing to cut your commission from 6 to 5, you're talking about, with a co-broke, you're talking about 3 to 2.5. It's about a 17% difference. So if you're going on 100 listings and you're losing 5 of them because of commission, you're still better off than offering 2.5% and getting all of them. You're starting out by discounting your salary 17%. So it's about being able to advocate and explain why the full commission is better for them, not for you. So a lot of times people have all their scripts about, oh, if I was a discount broker, how good would I negotiate for you? Oh, I've got expenses, I've got split with my company. Never make it about yourself. Nobody cares about you. As 18 years in the business, I've learned nobody cares about you. Eventually, hopefully that you've earned their respect and their trust, and they do care about you. But certainly when you're going in there, you're somebody that's going to explain to them how you're going to help them achieve their goals. So their goal is to make the most money. So you have to explain why a full commission helps them get the most money, because that's the only thing that they care about. They don't care about how much gas you're spending driving around or how much money you spend on advertising. That's not their concern. Their concern is what they net. So you have to explain to them, it's not what you spend, it's what you net. And we'll get into that later. We have to negotiate with our buyers and our sellers to overcome objections. So in Keller Williams' universe, they call it objection handling. What I like to look at it as speaking to people's concerns, because ultimately you're not trying to bat away people's objections. So if we think about it as we're trying to overcome objections, we're sort of missing the boat in a regard. The whole thing is about tapping into people's motivations. So we're trying to find out what their concern is. So we're not speaking to the wrong thing. So somebody says, oh, I don't want to pay 6% commission, I want to pay 5%. So instead of saying, oh, but if you offer 6%, you're going to attract agents, I would say, what is your goal here? We're asking questions. We're trying to find out what their motivation is. My goal is to sell this very quickly. I have a place in Florida I need to close on. So then I can handle their concern by saying, in order to sell this quickly, we want to get the most interest in your property. Because of that, our first line of marketing to the brokerage community is the commission. So if you want to get this sold quickly, let's offer a full commission. Let's put the price here, and that way we're getting the result that you want. So we're really, to me, it's not overcoming objections. It's handling and speaking to concerns. And then we negotiate to have better results for our clients. At the end of the day, it's always about the client. Your fiduciary responsibility is what we lead with, and it's our business card, it's our resume. So I always say that, especially in a vertical market like New York, when I sell apartment 2E and I break a record in the building, believe me, apartment 3, apartment 4E, apartment 5E, they want to know who did it. last year, it was 2 years ago, 80 John Street, I had apartment 8B. It had been on the market with 2 agents for over a year, did not lower the price, got it sold maybe 3% below ask in about 2 weeks on the market. Apartment 4B called me because he met my showing agent in the elevator and said, I want to talk to this Seth Levin guy. So I came, I got the listing. We actually raised the price a little bit from what even 8B sold for. And we sold his property and broke a record in the building. And then about 3 or 4 other people call. So better results for your clients naturally leads to better results for yourself. So, it's not about getting things sold quickly, so that you can move on. It's about achieving the best results for your clients because eventually that is the best result for you. My mantra is business begets business. So, the better we do in any given transaction, the more people are going to pick up the phone and call us. So better results for clients equals more results for you. We have to be in the mindset that we're in the business of achieving the absolute best we can for our clients. So we negotiate always with our clients' best interest in mind because it always rolls downhill to you. In 18 years in the business, I can count probably 50% of my business has come from original 4 or 5 years in the business, maybe 5 or 6 really awesome sales that I did that person introduced me to this person or this building. I got into the next building because of it. So you're not in a vertical market. You're in a beautiful part of New Jersey, but there are neighborhoods. Believe me, when 123 Main Street sells for a record, 125 Main Street notices. So the results that you get for one leads to the business that you'll get for others. And that's especially true with luxury real estate. Luxury real estate, people want to work with the people that have a proven track record of success. And I actually spoke on a panel recently for Keller Williams luxury division to the Keller Williams universe about the luxury market of the moment. And I always talk about, with me, there was 3 people early in my career that have probably led to 75% of my luxury business. Not that they gave me all the referrals, but the business I did for the 3 of them got me into another pocket of luxury network that led to more business. It's exponential growth. We have to be really connected to the outcomes of all of our situations. So Keller Williams' definition of negotiation is a great definition. Negotiation is bargaining between 2 or more parties, each with its own aims, needs, and viewpoints, seeking to discover a mutual ground and reach an agreement to settle a matter of mutual concern or resolve a conflict. I think that that's a great definition. Obviously, we're here to resolve conflict. We have a fiduciary responsibility to our sellers. So that's, we're trying to resolve a conflict where they have a very beneficial outcome. However, Seth's definition of negotiation, I usually don't refer to myself in the third party, but it's right here on the screen. My definition of negotiation is figure out what motivates who you're talking to and connect to their motivation in order to maximize your position. So I walk into a listing appointment or I get on my first call with a buyer and I'm asking questions. Obviously, this is sales 101. Ask questions, find out what's important to people. Because if you're talking to somebody and you're harping on the price and they bought this 25 years ago, and for them, it's about speed, it's about hassle-free, then you're harping on the wrong thing. So we're always trying to figure out what motivates the person that we're talking to. We don't want to embark on the wrong negotiation with the right person. We want to embark on the right negotiation with the right person. So we're always listening for clues. You'll hear me say this 500 times in the next hour, hour and a half, whatever it is. We're detectives first and foremost. That's what we do. We are detectives. So when I'm speaking with a buyer for the first time, I'm asking all the questions that we normally ask, but I'm trying to really boil it down to what's important to them. Do they want their hand held? Do they want research? We need to find out because people are different. Obviously, there's the disc profile. I don't really work in the disc profile as much because I work more intuitively. I'm just asking questions and trying to boil down what's important to people. But if it's the disc profile, figure out the way that people want to be worked with. You don't work with every one of your clients the same way. So the first time we're talking to a buyer, we're taking the negative off the table, which in 2020, the negative is they have access to the same information you do. 20 years ago, they didn't. So 20 years ago, the most important thing we did was supply the listing information. So the first time I speak with a buyer, what am I doing these days? I'm saying to them, I've been in the business for 18 years. I'd really love to work with you because what I do is I'm really research-based, data-driven, and I know the brokerage community, so I'll get inside information for you. And I know how to discern what is a good value and what is a good opportunity versus a bad opportunity or a bad value. I know that you have access to most of the listings that are on the market, just like I do. And when you can't sleep at 3 a.m, you're probably going to be looking at listings for yourself. I promise you, if I can't sleep at 3 a.m, most likely I'm not going to be looking for listings for you. So I just want to be clear, there's going to be times that you're going to beat me to the punch for listings, and I encourage that. This is a collaborative process, and I want you to show me what works for you, and I'm going to show you if it's good value or how best to achieve that given the current market conditions. So don't have the wrong negotiation. We don't want to be negotiating with people for 6 months about who found the listing first, because eventually they're going to find something without you, and maybe they're going to put in an offer without you, and you're going to waste 6 months. So what's important to me? My time. My time is really valuable. So I'm trying to take the negative off the table early, find out what motivates them. Is it, finding the right house? Is it getting the right value? Let's find out what somebody's motivation is. And we do that with agents that we're working with. We do that with our clients. I think the most important negotiations are long before we negotiate price, because we're setting up the negotiation. We're sort of greasing the runway for a future negotiation constantly with our clients. This is a very highly contested market right now in Summit, New Jersey. Everything is going above ask. I just want you to know that what a lot of agents are doing right now is they're pricing their I keep saying apartments because I deal mostly in apartments. They're pricing their homes in order to get multiple offers. So we have to go in knowing that that's going to be a strategy of a lot of agents. So you're not paying above value in order to get this property. You may have to pay above ask, but that was by design. Remember that was by design. Listing agents are savvy, especially in a market like Suffolk and Short Hills or Manhattan. These are very savvy markets. So the agents are doing this by design. So you're doing that in the beginning of your conversation with a buyer to get their, headspace around the fact that by paying above ask, they may, in fact, be paying below value. It doesn't necessarily correspond one-to-one. So what we're doing is we're tapping into somebody's motivation, we're removing the negatives, and we're setting ourselves up for a future negotiation that's already been paved. The way to that negotiation has been paved. I want all scenarios to be spoken of with my client before it starts. I'm listing, just this week, I listed a $3.5 million property, and I told my seller, we are probably going to wind up around 3.1, 3.2, but I think we need to build in a little bit of fat. I'm listing a $2.425 million listing next week, where I told her it's probably 2.25, 2.3. That's the market that we're in. We're in a different market than you. We're in a hyper buyer's market, similar to the early 2000s or similar to 2009 and 2010. You have to be hyper aware of the market that you're in. And also you have to separate different market segments. So in our market, there's condos versus co-ops. There's luxury versus entry. There's West Village versus Upper East Side. There's Upper East Side west of Lexington. There's Upper East Side east of Lexington. So what I like to do is have a cheat sheet when I speak with any client for the first time, which is typically over the telephone. If I'm meeting them in person, I'd like to commit some of the high level data points to memory so that I can speak with them intelligently and sound like an expert, which I am, but I don't have every data point off the top of my head. So I put those to memory or on a piece of paper. So what I do is I have average days on market for a specific market segment. So we're talking about Upper East Side condos, 2 to 5 million, 2 bedrooms to 3 bedrooms, average days on market, average price per square foot. My favorite metric is the market pulse. You have access to MLS, you can figure out market pulse. Market pulse is the average amount of inventory in contract for any given market segment. So it's pending divided by supply. Your clients are not thinking in market pulse, and it's a way for you to score different markets, different neighborhoods, different price points, show them where there's opportunity. You are going to win so many points with your clients. You're going to get so much loyalty from your clients when you can use data to show them where opportunity is. For instance, I'm jumping ahead. I actually usually get to this a little bit later, but I go where my mind goes. So last year, 2019 was still a buyer's market in New York City. And a client of mine, Elizabeth, I had sold her 1 bedroom in Chelsea, really prime, beautiful building in Chelsea, 16th and 7th Avenue. The Barney's building. Barney's used to be in the first floor, really awesome place. And she got married last year, and she and I were out for dinner, and she mentioned to me that she was pregnant. I was like, oh my God, that's incredible. I'm guessing that you're thinking about moving into a bigger place because you're now married and you're having a kid. And she said, you know what? It's such a bad market that I don't want to sell my place in this market. And I said, Elizabeth, let's enjoy dinner tonight, but let me come over on Wednesday after work and I'll show you what's going on in the market and give you enough tools to make a really informed decision. She's head of risk for a huge publicly traded company. She's not a dumb person. So I knew that if I went to her with specific data points, which this is huge in negotiation, you're leading with research, you're leading with facts. When people say to me, I feel, I always say, well, I don't feel, I know. So, have the resources at your beck and call so that you can, when someone says, oh, I feel like you're overpriced, I can say, well, actually, based on the numbers, ... we actually are 3% underpriced. So when people say they feel, I say I know. So obviously I would not say that to my client. I said, let me come over on Wednesday, let's talk. So I opened up my notes, opened up my computer, and I look, and the 1 bedroom co-op market at that point in Chelsea, 76% of actively listed inventory was in contract. 76, that's fantastic. 50% is a balanced market. 76 in a quote unquote buyer's market. That's why we don't paint with wide brushstrokes. That's why we don't believe the New York Times when they say that everybody's leaving the city. It takes 3 months to sell an apartment in New York City. So where are these people that couldn't sell their property for the last 4 months going? People are leaving the city. Certainly you guys are seeing it. But most people have not even been able to put their places on the market yet. So we can't paint with wide brushstrokes. So then I showed her 3-bedroom condos, which is what she said she would want. In Manhattan, 22% of actively listed inventory was in contract. So she was selling in a seller's market and buying in a buyer's market. Perfect arbitrage opportunity for her, and she understood that. So we listed her place for 1.2 million, which at the time I thought was actually worth like 1.1, 1.5, but just because there was no inventory, we listed it. We actually achieved 1.2 million. We got her asking price. She wound up extending her search to Brooklyn, 3-bedroom condos, and we found a new development condo that was originally listed for 4 million, had lowered to 3.35, I think at the time, that we got for 2.75 million. She sold her apartment that was worth 1.1 for 1.2, and she's bought an apartment that was maybe not worth 4, but was probably worth 3.5 3.4 in a, if it hadn't been on the market for so long, and she got that for 2.75. So we have to be able to look at and pinpoint different market conditions, even in our general geographic markets, because that's what makes a good real estate agent. A bad real estate agent says it's a buyer's market. A bad real estate agent says it's a seller's market. A good real estate agent picks out pockets of opportunity.
So I don't want to interrupt, but it sounds like, so what you're really, I mean, you're getting like super hyper local in terms of these markets and finding the best, it's not just Brooklyn as a whole. It's like this development is this is what's happening here right now. And that's why it's good or bad or should be on your radar.
Exactly. And, I'll talk about this in a little bit. When you're saying hyper local, I'm understanding the hyper local market, but I always explain to people that I'm not hyper local, that I understand the entirety of the market, as opposed to an agent that just knows one particular piece of the market, because buyers are not just looking in one piece of the market. But we'll get to that. How to beat the local agent that's done all the transactions in a neighborhood. We've been sitting on this page for a second because I like to tell stories. When I negotiate with people, I always tell stories. I tell sellers about success stories that other people have had using a certain tactic or strategy. I don't tell them you need to stage. I don't tell them you need to lower your price. I don't tell them you need, because basically saying you're a dummy, I'm the expert, listen to me. What I do is I lead, breadcrumbs. I'm helping them get to the place that's going to actually put them in a better position to win. You have to understand, my negotiation is not about manipulating my clients. My negotiation with my clients is to help them achieve the best result based on my hundreds of transactions versus their one transaction when they bought their property. They don't have the same tools that I have. So I'm using these tactics to help guide them to a place where they can help themselves. So when I'm telling stories during my class, it's the same way that I speak when I'm on a listing presentation. So my first negotiation should probably go unspoken, but unfortunately it has to be spoken. There's enough information out there where you don't have to lie, and lying is a bad thing in general, and you will get caught. So my first negotiation is don't lie. Back when I was at Douglas Elliman, there was an agent next to me. She was top 20 in the company. We had 2 offices and we shared a hallway. So we always would go back and forth. We're actually playing golf tomorrow together. She's a top agent. I went over to talk to her and I said, there's a property at 151 West 17th Street that I have an offer on. They're asking like 1.9. I came in at 1.6 because I think that's where she said, oh my God, I have an offer on the same property. We came in at 1.7. And I said, oh, interesting. She said, but don't worry, we've actually moved on. My client decided that's not the right property for them. I knew that piece of information because the agent told me that there was another offer. Now I knew that offer was off the table. So I called the agent and he said, oh, the other offer just came up. They just raised their offer. And I'm like, I didn't say, oh, you're lying. Because why would I expose the card? It's like poker. Why would I tell him that I know he's bluffing? I want to take advantage of his bluff. So I said to him, you know what? If he came up and they were way ahead of us, we don't see value at that point. And this is something I always said. We see value up to X. We don't say, oh, we feel. We see value up to X.
Can whoever please mute themselves?
It looks like Angela, could we? Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
So, I said to him, we see value up to X. We really like this property, but it sounds like this other person sees value at a higher number than we do. So we're going to move on. We're going to look at other properties. If your seller wants to come back to us at the place that we see value, and we saw value up to about 1.75. We were willing to go up to 1.75. We were at 1.6 because that was just the nature of the market at the time. And he said, wait. He called me later that day. He's like, we'll do a deal at 1.7. Will you come up to 1.7? I said, we saw something else that we like. We still really like this. We'll do it at 1.675. We got it at 1.675. We were willing to go up to 1.75. If he didn't lie to me, we would have probably wound up at 1.75. So lying actually can come back and hurt you, but that should go without saying. We're not in the business of lying. There's enough information out there that we can curate our negotiation without doing that. Be confident. 90% of negotiation is listening. 10% is confidence. Like, it is so important to project confidence. And part of confidence is knowing the story. Research builds confidence. Knowing what you're talking about builds confidence. When I was new to the business, I remember driving around with buyers and talking about my recent trip to Africa because I didn't even know anything about the market, anything to switch off the story. But eventually you learn the market, and that's what you want to talk about. You want to lead with confidence. So what I always say is, don't ask. You never say, do you think your seller would come down to 1.7? Do you think your buyer would come up to 1.8? You say, I've showed you where the comps are at. It's a buyer's market right now. We do like this property. There's other things out there that we're looking at, or if it's seller's market, it's a seller's market. We'd like to do the deal with you, but there are other buyers out there. In order to get this done, we need this to be at least 1.7 million. We need. If someone says to me, can you? I will always say, no, we can't. But if they say we need, then I go back to my seller and I say, in order to get this done, it sounds like we need, it works on me too. People negotiate with me. I'm just as vulnerable to negotiation. Well, maybe not just as vulnerable, but people have terms that they're willing to do. I can't, just because I can negotiate well, doesn't mean I can make people pay more than they're willing to pay usually. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we can.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
You made a point about the language that you choose. Do you have a couple of favorite phrases that you like you just mentioned, we need, or we see value at this price point? Yes. Those, because that's very much like, well, I think your house is worth 1 million, it's less negative, right? I mean, do you have, favorites or?
I do 100%. I always say, based on 15%
down. If you want to do 20%, that's $1,000 down. That's 5.7%.
So I would actually negotiate that differently. No, I'm kidding. So I always, say based on what we've seen in the market, or given the amount of inventory on the market, we need to see. It's always based on. Like, I can't drive that home enough. I'll give you an example. So I had this goes back to pulling the negative off the table, and it also goes back to doing research and wording things correctly. So in New York, we show all our own properties as the listing agent. So, it's sort of like a luxury market. Elsewhere, everything is a luxury market. Here, we have 2 agents at every show. So I had apartment 4A at 111 East 75th Street, and apartment 8A on a higher floor had sold for $800,000, and we were listed at 1.2 million. My 1.2 million made a lot of sense based on the market, the size, the location. It was between Park and Lexington, 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, good, decent view, 50% down building, which brought the price down a little bit, but 1.2 made so much sense to me. I couldn't understand why 8A sold for 800,000. Did some research, asked some people around the building. It turned out the co-op had said that was the lowest price that they would approve for a father selling to a daughter. So I had that piece of information. So when people called, I would say, and this is another thing I do, I compliment the other agent. So you want to know another thing that I often say? As I'm sure you know, you're a great agent. I'm sure you did your research and know that apartment 8A sold for 800,000. That's because a father sold to the daughter, and that was the lowest price so I'm removing a negative. I'm complimenting them. guess what? When people make appointments, at that point, they haven't done their research. But I'm telling them, I'm sure, as I'm sure you know, I'm making them feel better. They're letting their guard down. You know, negotiation is not beating people over the head. Negotiation is saying, hey, the water's warm, come in. You know, it's greasing the runway. We are trying to bring people in. So I'll get back to my negotiation musts, but just because, you know, this is the way that I think, I'm very tangential. You guys are in a seller's market. You have 5 offers on a property. Do you want to push the 6th person away, or do you want that 6th person to come in? You want that 6th person to come in. So do you say, oh, we've got great offers. We've got so many offers. We're expecting more. No, you say, we've got some offers on the table. We're certainly not at a point where we've made our decision yet. I would encourage you to come in because we're looking at a host of criteria in order to make the decision. You know, we're not trying to push people away. Oh, we have 17 offers. You know, what does that do? You're high pressure, you're pushing people away. We say, we have a lot of interest. We're getting some offers. We're far from over. Their door is still open. I would encourage you to put an offer in because we're evaluating this decision based on a number of criteria. Like, we're always trying to bring people in. You know, that is huge when it comes to bringing, especially when you're working in a seller's market, a hyper seller's market, you're trying to bring people in. You know, do your research. It's not a feeling. Have your cheat sheets, market pulse, average days on market, you know, and that works for you, you know, when you're a buyer's agent, and that works for you when you're a seller's agent. People will say, you know, my seller won't do it for under 1.8. And you say, well, I understand that your seller sees the value at 1.8. I get that they feel that, because I would throw that word in because I think it's a cheap garbage word. I would say, I see that they feel that it's 1.8, but actually based on the fact that only 32% of active inventory is in contract, average days on market is 108, and the average price is $1,500 a square foot, which would put your property at 1.65. You know, I understand that your seller is striving for this, you know, aspirational 1.8, but the market is telling us that the value is 1.65. You're doing your research, you're confident, you're not beating them over the head. You're not saying, hey, idiot, 1.8 is absolutely not the number. You're saying, I get it, I understand. You know, you're a good agent, you're listening to your client, and they have an aspirationally based feeling. What we're looking at is the actual research here. And if you can give me examples, I would love to take those back to my buyer. They don't have examples because I've done all the research. There is nothing. So now I'm putting the ball in their court to come up with this fictional comp analysis that doesn't exist. So do your research. You can't lose if you've done your research. What you can happen is not get the property because somebody's not realistic, or you cannot maybe not sell the property because the buyer is not realistic, but you're not going to lose the negotiation. You do your research, seem cooperative even when you're pushing. So this is something I learned long before I was in real estate, when I was importing museum quality gemstones. And I've been to India 3 times. And I've been all over the world negotiating with miners and dealers, and people have different places that they come in. If you go to an outdoor market in India and you pay them full price, you walk away, they're going to laugh. So it's not about where people start, it's about where they finish. So we're never saying when we get an offer, oh, this offer is awful. I say, thank you so much for the offer. You know, you're a good agent. I understand that you're presenting the offer that your buyer, you know, gave you, but based on X, Y, and Z, I think we both know that this is more like a $1,500 square foot property. And if you want, I can actually send you over the comp analysis that you can share with the data points of market polls and all these things. Because guess what I want to do? I want to turn the other agent into an agent working for me. I'm hoping that they're lazy and they literally just forward my email. So when you're writing an email to an agent in a negotiation, assume it's getting passed on and cater it to the buyer or the seller, because they're probably going to copy and paste. A lot of agents are very lazy. Not all by a long shot, but a lot of them will just copy paste and shoot along. I've had team members that came to my team from other teams or other companies, and they wanted to do that kind of stuff. I said, are you crazy? You're going to just take the information and the wording from another agent and pass it along to your client? No, you're the conduit. You have, you're supposed to take the information and give it to your client. You're not just supposed to pass it along. If somebody's a brand new agent and they give me an offer and it's all filled out wrong, I'm really going to try to get them to work for me. I'm going to say, you know what, I can tell you're a little bit new. Let me help you. So I'm going to give you all the information that you're going to need in order to help your client come to the conclusion of where the value is. So you're trying to, like you're in the CIA, you're trying to turn them and make them a double agent. That is the goal. It doesn't always work, but that is most certainly the goal. I was actually on a podcast recently, a national real estate podcast, and the guy asks all the same 12 questions to everybody. And one of his questions was, what do you look for in a cooperating agent? And I said, pliability, the ability for me to mold them. And he said, wow, I've been doing this for a long time. You're the first person that told us a genuine, real answer. Because everybody else said, oh, I'm looking for someone that's communicative, somebody that, shares the same goals. Yeah, obviously we want them to be communicative. We want them to work towards a closing, but ideally we're going to be able to have them use our data, our comp analysis straight to their client's mouth, straight to their client's ears. Remove negatives as soon as you can. I talked about that with the buyer, take off the race to find listings. But also in New York, like I said, we show all of our own listings. I had a listing that we actually had on the market of just a short period before COVID. We took it off the market. We're actually bringing it back on the market next week. That was the one I was mentioning. We're going to price it around 2.4, 2.425. It's 2,100 square foot condo in Chelsea. A 2,100 square foot 3-bedroom condo in Chelsea should be about 3.84 million. We're asking 2.4 because all the living room and all the bedrooms, southern exposure faces a brick wall, about 10 feet off. There's one western exposure that's open, but the rest of it faces a brick wall. So we price that in, but what we do is when we're talking to the person first, we want to remove it when we're scheduling the appointment. So my assistant or myself, whoever's speaking, mentions, this is not a view apartment, which is why it's priced the way that it is. We're taking it off the table so it doesn't get used against us later. But also, when they walk in, the first thing I do is, hey guys, follow me, check this out. You have to see this. And I bring them over and I point. And they go, it's a brick wall. And I say, people throw around the $1 million view very frequently. This is actually a $1.5 million view because it's saving you $1.5 million off of a comparable apartment. What am I doing? Making them understand that's been priced in. I'm pulling it off the table so it doesn't get used against us later in negotiation. And I'm actually just trying to make it kind of a fun environment. That's part of it too, is like when you're showing properties, you're trying to bring people in. That type of stuff is the same as apartment 8A versus 4A. It's priced at 800. Do your research, understand what the value of a view apartment would be versus a non-view apartment, or something that's on a cul-de-sac versus something that's next to the fire department. You have to understand that, and it's take away the fire department that it's next to a fire department as a negative. You're now able to get this much more house because of this. So you're trying to pull off the negatives. Always stay calm, keep your energy easy. Like, our business is so freaking crazy that it's so easy to go up and down with the tide. You're not the tide, you're the dock. Your client is the boat, and you're trying to hold them to the dock as the market's going up and down, the other agents going up and down, the inspection came back poorly. You need to be calm. So the agent on the other side, is like, I can't believe you gave us this offer. This is terrible. Hey, I totally appreciate where you're coming from. If we're not the buyers for this property, so be it. we see value up to X and we see it because of A, B, and C. You know, you're keeping cool. You're also, you know, I hate buddy people. You know, when I first came into the business, New York City was literally on fire. No, well, not literally. But it was really hot market. And the first 5 years in the business, I was working mostly with buyers. My clients tended to be young, well, at that point, young hedge fund, young private equity, young finance guys. And they were spending more than most people their age. They were certainly spending more than I had the ability to spend at that age. And I was going against, you know, 10 offers on properties all the time, and I kept losing. I was like, oh my God, I've got these amazing buyers with all this money, and they're looking to spend it, and we can't spend it. So what did I do? I knew my young finance guys wanted to be in Chelsea at the time. That was really where they wanted to be. And the people that were having kids, married, having kids, wanted to be in the Upper East Side, Upper West Side. So what I was doing was on Sundays, even if I didn't have a buyer or didn't have a listing, I was going to see who the agent was that had the most listings in the Upper East Side, who had the most listings in the Upper West Side, who had the most listings in Chelsea, and I was going to their open house and I was befriending them. A lot of these people that I did that to are still my friends almost 20 years later, but guess what? As soon as I befriended them, my offers were being heard and they were giving me information. Seth, we have an offer at 1.8 million. You know, come in at 1.25, I'll get you the apartment. So, you know, I actually mentioned this on a panel that I sat on recently, that the agents in your market are only your competition for about 5 minutes when you're going for property. After that, they're your greatest resource. Who's bringing a buyer to your property? Who's got the listing that you want your buyer to get? It's the agents in your geography, your region. So you need to, you know, be kind of, for lack of a better term, be cool with them so that you get, you know, inside information, or, you know, they'll, like, for instance, I have a property, it's a rental, we're asking $10,500. We have 3 people that are interested. I'm very good friends with one of the agents, and it's not that I'm trying to get his client the property. We're seeing which one shakes out the best, but, you know, he's the most willing to pick up the phone and just chat with me. So he's probably going to get the most information. So look at the agents in your market as your allies more than your competition, because, you know, we count on each other to get deals done. So be cooperative, keep calm, create urgency without being salesy. So you guys aren't seeing this in our market, but we are. So you've been on the market for a cool 180 days. How do you convey urgency when you've been on the market for a cool 180 days? You have to come up with a story. We've recently lowered the price, as you can see. You know, the sellers wanted to try the price. Now we're in the market. You know, we're in the market now, and we're getting a lot of good feedback, and we're getting a lot of interest. Or in New York, we have a lot of condo properties that have tenants in them. You know, the tenant moved out, we were able to bring in the right furniture, or we finally staged the property and brought in the painting that we so needed. And now, you know, there's always some reason. Figure out what the reason is, create a little urgency. And you're not saying, oh my God, we have 10 offers when you don't. But you're saying, you know, due to X, Y, and Z that we did, we're now seeing an uptick in interest. You know, these things work. You know, as you know, you're a good agent. You've hinted, all of a sudden people like it. You know, so we're complimenting, we're creating urgency without being salesy. Never be desperate. You know, again, we've had strong interest recently since this. You know, we had an offer, it fell through. You know, I'm not making this up, but usually at some point, if you've had a listing on the market for 180 days, you've had an offer. If you haven't, you're really out of whack with pricing, and you should probably run from the listing. Because if you haven't had an offer in 180 days, guess what? You're wasting your time. Like, my best piece of advice to your agents is don't be afraid to end toxic relationships. The best feeling is ending, you know, a relationship with a seller or buyer that's just going to run you in circles for 2 years. your energy is not going to be available for those who are actually going to use your energy to get things done. So if you've been on the market for 180 days and you don't have an offer, I would say that you have to have a very serious conversation about lowering the price or ending the relationship. But at some point in 180 days, you've had an offer. So in order to not seem desperate, you say, yeah, we've been on the market for a while. We actually did have an offer, getting pretty close. My sellers are at this point, really ready to negotiate. Or if that's not the case, we've had a fair amount of interest in offers. We've had some close calls. It's a great property. You're not being desperate. Never say, this is one of my favorite things to do when I'm on a listing presentation, when it's an expired, is say, I'm sure your previous agent was fantastic, but guess what? After 6 months, they're walking into your property and it's a negative for them. They're going, oh, I got to show this property again. Guess what? When I take this listing over, it's a brand new listing for me, and I'm bringing so much positivity and excitement. And guess what? That is contagious, and people are going to see it, and we are going to get more activity than the agent that's been sitting on it for the last 6 months, who looks at it as, as a problem. For me, this is an amazing new opportunity to help you sell your property. So if at a standstill, I don't like to say take it or leave it. I like to keep the door open. Like I said before to the guy who was lying to me about the other offer, I said, there's a lot of inventory. We're going to look if it's still available, and your seller decides they want to come back to us. We're happy to do that. So I have a co-listing in Florida, $3 million. We just got a signed property, and now they're coming to New York to buy $5 million. So I'm super excited about this because I've had this co-listing in Florida for about 2 years. We originally priced at $5 million. We were now priced at $3 million, and we have a contract out. The person who's buying it at $3 million was someone that we said to them, we're not going to do a deal with you because we lowered the price to $3 million. We didn't say take it or leave the $3 million. We said, we've done all the negotiating up front. At this point, we're really sellable and we're below market. I encourage you to go out there and see if there's any comparable property. And if there isn't, we're still here for you. We're always trying to encourage people to come back. The water's warm. When I first got into the business, like I mentioned, it was a hyper aggressive seller's market, and a lot of my younger couples were having kids and they wanted to move up to the Upper East Side. And a lot of agents on the Upper East Side at that point in time, it was just almost like a badge of honor to be mean. And, I'd bring up a buyer and I'd make an offer and they'd say, what are you, stupid? Da, 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 da. I was like, oh my God. So I learned that they would, that attitude was repellent, because my buyer would say, you know what? Forget them. Let's move on. Even though it might have been the right property for them. So what we're always trying to do is bring people in, not push people away. Who do we negotiate with? We negotiate with our buyers, we negotiate with our sellers, we negotiate with people on the other side. Certainly, again, our client is the biggest negotiation, and commission is of utmost importance. And I always tell people, the commission that you put out is the first piece of marketing to the brokerage community. There are agents out there that don't do 100 transactions a year, they do 2. And if they've got a buyer in town for one day, they can take them to all the 2% listings or the 3% listings, because now you're talking about 33% divided by 2, 16.5% of their yearly income. 95% of transactions have 2 agents. We want to encourage those agents to come to your property. So if it's the difference between a 6% and a 5%, let's raise the price 2% so we could avoid this conversation. Another thing that I say when they inevitably say, can we talk about commission? I'll say, certainly. I'm guessing that you're going to ask me to do a 7% commission because you know that's a buyer's market. They say, no. We're going to ask 5%. I go, okay, so let's settle on 6%. It's a little bit of humor, but I'm also saying that the best course of action would be 7%. because we're trying to encourage people. We're not trying to push them away. It's about what you net. Somebody asked before, and I didn't see what it was. What are some catchphrases of mine? It's about what you net. It's not about what you spend. I had a listing right here. I don't know if you guys can see this. I bring this show sheet with me every listing presentation I go to because it helps me negotiate with my client, which is the most important negotiation when I'm trying to get a listing. Why you should stage, why you should hire somebody who knows the entirety of the market, not the local market exclusively, and why you should, why you should stage, why you should listen to the expert on pricing, and why you should use someone who knows the entirety of the market. So my aunt owned an art gallery in New York City for about 30 years. One of her best patrons was this guy who at this point, it was 96 years old, had lived in this apartment in Gramercy for 35 years. He painted this apartment with dark gray ceilings and dark burgundy walls. He had more furniture, more sculptures. My aunt must have made so much money off of him because every inch of the apartment had a painting on it. I mean, it was dark and it needed a lot of work. But what it also was about 1,600 square feet on the top floor of a very nice Gramercy co-op that had views over the East River all the way to Long Island. So I walked in and the daughter who was actually spearheading this, she said to me, Seth, and she was a super savvy woman. She was one of Woody Allen's producers, like for forever, like really, really sharp woman. She told me at the time, she said, Seth, we know your aunt and we really wanted to, extend the courtesy of having you come over, but he's going to use the building expert. And the woman in the building who's been selling, she's been in the building for 40 years. She sits on the floor. She sells 90% of the stuff. And I mean, that's our person to push off and get the listing. And I said, instead of saying, oh, use me, instead, I asked questions. Always ask questions. Because I wasn't trying to say, oh, use me. At that moment, I said, I totally understand. What price did she suggest? The daughter said, Seth, she suggested 1.4 million. My father thinks it's light, but he's gonna trust her. I said, before coming over here, I had an idea of a price of 1.6. Seeing the current condition and the amount of stuff in here, I think it's worth 1.5 million. But if we thin out what's here, and we don't need to bring in staging stuff, there's enough good stuff here. We just need to thin it out. And I will curate a nice look for the apartment. And if we bring in a painter, and I've got a great painter recommendation, do it very inexpensively, probably for about 12,000, I think you can get 1.6 million. I left. She came to me. I got a call the next day. If you think you can get me 1.6 million, my father's happy to go with you. So we brought in the painter. He actually charged $10,000, not 12. $10,000, painted the place. We staged. We brought out furniture that was too much. We used paintings that were already there, and we curated this beautiful, I don't know if you can see it, this beautiful look with stuff that he already had. So right before we put the place on the market, I go to my computer, I look, and we were the only 2-bedroom in Gramercy under 2 million. I said, her name was Helen. I called her and I said, Helen, why don't we try for 1.7 million? She said, Seth, I've been buying and selling real estate for the last 40 years. Nobody's ever asked me to raise my price. They always ask me to lower my price. I said, please, trust me here. We're the only property under 2 million. First open house, the agent, the building expert who's been in there forever, came in with the client. And in front of everybody else in the open house, she goes, this thing is so overpriced, it'll never sell. Fortunately, the buyer wasn't there at that moment, came a little bit later in the open house, came back about 2 days later. I said to him, we're the only one priced under 2 million with a lot of interest. This is going to go pretty quick. I got an offer of 1.75. We closed at 1.75. We broke a record for 2-bedroom in this building. So now I take this on every listing presentation I go to. And what does it do? It lets me tell a story of success that other people want to follow. I'm leading the breadcrumbs to why you paint, why you stage, why you hire an expert, and you don't need to hire the building expert, because guess what? The building expert is tied to the most recent comps in that building. Or the neighborhood expert is tied to the most recent comps in that neighborhood. Guess what? Your buyer is looking at your property, is not just looking in your building. They might not just be looking in your neighborhood. In fact, they might not just be looking in your town. So you want to hire an agent that knows what they're looking at, so they can convey value based on the entirety of the market, not just the most recent comp. Because guess what? They're tied to the most recent comp, and the most recent comp could be bad. I'm not tied to the most recent comp in your building, because I can show that that's just one of many comps in a dynamic, fluid market. So I have done this brochure, this list, this show sheet, to every pitch I ever go on subsequent to that, because I have won, since this property, if I had to guess, 10 or 12 listings away from the building expert because of this exact thing. But guess what? I might be talking to people right now who are the building expert or the neighborhood expert. So how do you flip the coin? You can tell people, guess what? Most neighborhood experts only know the neighborhood. I work with buyers, or my team works with buyers, my team works with sellers. We cover a broad geography, but we are the most knowledgeable about your neighborhood. But we're not only tied to your neighborhood. So that's a way to have a script for if you are happen to be the neighborhood expert. So, we listen more than we speak, all the time. And my favorite story about listening more than you speak. So I had clients, it's ironic. She was a childhood friend of mine, actually my first girlfriend in like 6th grade. And when she moved to New York, she bought a studio from me in this building. A few years later, she met this fantastic guy. They got married. I sold that studio for them. They moved into a 2-bedroom on the Upper East Side. She got pregnant. They thought that they were going to stay there for a while, but guess what? They had twins and the apartment just wasn't big enough. So she calls me and she said, Seth, what do you think the apartment's worth? And I said, in this market, it's worth about 1.475, 1.45. And they said, you know what, Seth? We totally get that you're the expert. You've been fantastic for us in the past, but would you mind trying 1.55? Just because we're not in a rush. And I always say to people, just because you're not in a rush doesn't mean you want to damage the property. So I'm totally happy to try 1.55, but we're going to put in the listing agreement that we're going to lower it to 1.495 after 2 weeks if we don't get an offer. So again, removing the negative. The negative is the future asking for the price reduction. We're removing it by putting it in the listing agreement, by bringing it up first. We don't have to have that conversation because we've already laid the groundwork for all the different permutations of what can happen in a negotiation, or what can happen over the course of the listing. So we're taking the negative off, 1.495 in 2 weeks if we don't get an offer. First open house, we get an offer. I actually get them up to like 1.495, 1.485. Super happy with that. They back out. Go back, start showing it during the week, do another open house. We get another offer. I got them up to like 1.475. Uncanny, we lose that one too. So now we're at that 2 week point and they say to me, Seth, I'm sure you're going to ask for the price reduction. I said, not just yet. There was somebody who came to the second open house. I just have a feeling they're your buyer. We don't want to lower the price before they make an offer because they're going to come in below ask anyway. Let's give ourselves a little bit more room to negotiate. So they came back for a second showing and they're walking around and I said, oh, are you guys only looking in the Upper East Side? And they said, and if you're not doing your own showings, you can ask this stuff over the phone. Ask these kind of questions. Are you only looking in the Upper East Side? Oh yeah, not only just the Upper East Side, we're actually only looking in PS6. I said, okay, so this geography, okay, I got that. Are you looking only up to 1.5 million? No, we have a budget up to 1.8 million. Okay, I've got that. And why are you moving to this neighborhood? Of course, because you want your daughter to get into school. And I know a co-op takes almost 3 months to close in New York. I know what month it was. I knew that if they didn't close on something within 3 months, they weren't going to meet the deadline to be in that school district. So we're thinking about what they're saying. We're not just asking questions for the sake of it. We're making mental notes. So I went to my computer and I looked, what available inventory under 1.8 million exists in PS6? Guess what? I was literally the only one. That's a really good feeling when you know that that person needs that apartment. So their agent at the time, I was at Douglas Elliman, their agent was at Corcoran, their agent was the number, I think 2 or 3 agent for Corcoran at that point in the country. Pretty good agent. So I called her and I said, you know, I don't know if you're making an offer. Guess what? I knew they were going to make an offer. I don't know if you're making an offer. That's a white lie. That's not really a lie. That's just laying the groundwork. I don't know if you're going to make an offer or not, but I just want to let you know that because of the level of interest on this property, we're going to best and final with a deadline of 5 p.m. on Thursday. The level of interest was them. We were asking 1.55. They came in with an offer of 1.585. We accepted it. We broke a record for the building. I had my sellers write a testimonial letter talking about how great I was, and I sent it to everybody in that building and the surrounding buildings, and I got about 10 to 15 more listings from that. That is listening more than you speak, asking questions, but not just asking questions for conversation. We're trying to gather information. Remember, it's about tapping into motivations so that we can help our fiduciary achieve their highest result, which in turn helps us achieve more business, which is our highest result. So we certainly are negotiating initial price, commission, and then agreed upon sales price. So again, we're setting up the expectations up front. We're going to lower the price 2 weeks. We're also tapping into motivation, but negotiation begins at first contact. We did that already with the buyer. You know, we're taking off the table that they're going to beat us to the punch. What is this one? Transaction should be amicable. Again, you know, we're not beating people over the head. Buying real estate, unless you're talking to an institutional investor, is emotional. We're trying to make it easy. We're not trying to make it easy for them to achieve a price that is better than what we want, but we're trying to make it easy for them to give us the price that we want. So we're being gracious. We're saying thank you for your offer. We're never beating people over the head. Real estate is an industry where you get more flies with honey. There are other, you know, corporate law, they beat each other over the head. And if they try to be amicable with each other, it's going to be perceived as weakness. Here, we're literally saying, come right this way. You know, we're 100% greasing the wheels. How do we negotiate from a position of strength without seeming overly pushy? Again, it's, as I'm sure you know, you're a good real estate agent. You've done your homework. We're these, again, catchphrases. You're a good real estate agent, as I'm sure you're aware. You've done your homework. As you see in the market. We're telling them, hey, this is what's going on, but we're doing it in a really nice way. Again, use flattery. 5% of the agents in any market have 90% of the inventory. Be very nice to those 5%. Maybe ask them if they want to get a drink sometime. Figure out who the top 5% is. Go to their open houses, even if you don't have a client. Obviously, maybe not during COVID, but in general, you want to know these people. I call it conspiratorial consensus. Like, I know your buyer is not, seeing where the value is right now. It must be frustrating for you. But if you can get them up to 1.75, I will work with my seller to get this done. My seller, is perfectly happy with me throwing out a number of 1.75 because I know they would take 1.7. So it's conspiratorial. It's, we can get this done. Let me know what I can do to help you get your buyer over the hurdle. That stuff really works, especially with newer agents. So if you're a newer agent, listen to what I'm saying. Don't let somebody do that to you. Anticipate what's going to be used against you and use it first, of course. So how do we make an offer for a buyer? Do you guys have, I can only see a couple faces. Ronnie, can you give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down? Do you have A standardized offer form that you guys use, or do you write something up? Yes? Okay. So we have with co-ops, we have a real estate board of New York financial statement that needs to go in with every offer. But just because we have a standardized form doesn't mean that I don't type up a cover letter that speaks to the high level points of the offer. Dear attention Joe broker, my customers Joe and Mary example are submitting an offer for the above referenced property. They are offering 1.65 million, 27% cash. They're pre-approved for a loan in excess of the remainder. And for a co-op, this is important. Please see attached financial statement. Joe and Mary have a combined net worth of approximately 2.1 million and a yearly combined income of approximately 625,000, and their debt to income ratio will be below 26%. Why am I doing this? So that the agent on the other side knows that I know what I'm talking about. They don't have to search for information. They don't have to come back to me and say, Seth, thanks for the offer, but what's their income? What's this? What's that? So basically whatever it is, you want to fill out that offer form correctly, because guess what? When I get an offer texted to me for a co-op where we need to know their debt to income ratio and their post-close liquidity, I need to know if they're a viable candidate for that co-op. And you need to know, is this a qualified buyer for your seller? And if you're the buyer, you want them to not think that you're brand new. Because when I see somebody give me a bad offer, I become, their den mother. I'm going to help them. I'm going to say, I see from this offer that you're a little bit new. What we need is, we need a revenue financial form. We need it presented this way because I need to be able to tell my seller if you're a good candidate. Also, just to let you know, your offer, it's a little bit lower than I believe what's going to get a good response from them. So since we have to redo the offer, maybe you want to come up to this number. I'm going to become their guru, their rabbi, whatever it is, to help them help my client. So you want to put a good offer forward, because not only are they going to want to work with a professional, but it also shows that you know what you're doing. So as soon as I get an offer, I make an offer. Remember, I type it up. I don't press send. Don't hide behind email. Don't hide behind text. We're in the information gathering business. We only get information if we hear. Can't get much information from an email. So I press send on the email. No, I pick up the phone, I call them, and I say, did you get the offer I just sent over? And they'll say, no, and I press send. They'll look, oh, here it is. They open it up and they read it to me every time without fail. They'll read it to me. Offer of 1.65 million, 27% cash, contingent on financing. So I hear that contingent on financing is the problem. So now I can go back to my buyer and I can say, I don't think we have to negotiate much on down payment or price, but we may have to be creative with the mortgage contingency. So in New York, we put 10% down, we waive the mortgage contingency. That means you lose 10% if you don't get your mortgage. So what I started doing about 15 years ago, and I didn't know anyone else who did it at the time, was we say, here's the 10% down payment. We'll waive the mortgage contingency, but only 2% of the purchase price is in jeopardy. On a $2 million purchase, much easier pill to swallow losing $40,000 than $200,000 if you lose your job, let's say. So be creative, but also you're not pressing send on the offer until you get them on the phone. Then what do we do when we are working for a seller and we get an offer? As soon as it comes in, and it typically comes in via email, and they do not pick up the phone to call me, I call them until I get them on the phone, and I say, hey, thank you so much for your offer. Just want to go over it. See, you're offering 1.65 million. Okay. And I'll pause. I will create an awkward silence until they say something, because they're going to tell me something. They're not just going to sit there silently for the next 15 minutes. So what they're going to tell me is, don't worry, it's an opening offer, or we have an offer someplace else. This is pretty close to their top number. One is a really good thing to hear. One is a really bad thing to hear, but what are they both? They're both information that I can use when I have a conversation with my seller. So I can go back to my seller and I can say, you know, they have an offer someplace else. This is not our market. It's a buyer's market, as you know, because we're about to buy something more expensive, so you can take advantage of that. So maybe we want to negotiate a little bit more softly with this person. But if they say, you know, this is an opening offer, don't worry, we'll come down just a touch. Or right now, I have an offer on the table that we're not going to come down at all, because the offer is so far that we're going to say to them, you know what, thank you so much for the offer. We feel like I wouldn't say that. We are priced in the market. We would love for you to give us another offer, present us another. I mean, it's so low that coming down just would not make sense. But in general, you know, we're trying to get information so we can help our seller make informed decisions. Seller's market, we talked about this. If you're the seller, you're not trying to push people away. You're trying to encourage more people to come in. You're not being that crazy person with their hair on fire. 20 offers. Oh my God, it's such a great market. Oh, it sucks to be you. No, we're saying, you know, thanks so much for your interest. We have a lot of interest on the property. We do have some offers. We haven't come to a decision yet. The door is definitely still open. We're looking at a multitude of criteria, so I encourage you to make an offer.
Can I ask a question here?
Sure.
We got a question earlier about this topic, and it says, what happens when you do not have the time to negotiate in a multiple bid? Isn't it what the buyer is willing to pay, even though the research says X and he needs to go over by, you know, X percent? Does that make sense?
It does make sense, except for you don't have time to negotiate, meaning you're the buyer.
Susan, are you still on? Do you want to clarify maybe?
You're representing the buyer?
Basically, if you've got one shot, you've got to put your offer in a certain period of time.
Yep.
You know, put it at 5 o'clock on Tuesday, and that's it. One shot.
Your timing is impeccable, because that's literally the next thing I'm talking about. What do you do when you're the buyer in a seller? That's perfectly apropos. When you're the buyer, you, as the agent for the buyer, your first contact, you've told them you're in a hyper aggressive seller's market. It's a tactic that sophisticated agents are using. They're going above. They're encouraging people to go above ask by pricing below where they know it's going to go. So they already know that it's going to go above ask. So that's the first step, is you've set the tone that they know that it's going to go above ask. Second thing that you can do is pick up the phone and talk to the seller's agent. You certainly can have enough time for a phone call. I would say never do guesswork. You know, you're doing your research. You and your buyer are coming up with a top number that you're comfortable with before you go into a best and final. Never go in without knowing what your top number is, because that way if you lose, somebody else overpaid and you're fine with that. Live to fight another day. Find your opportunities. Not every house is for every person. So know what your top number is, and then call the agent and say, hey, you know, Joe, like, I just want to convey to you, my buyer really wants this property. If we get this property, I promise you, you're going to see us at the closing table. They really want this property. Is there anything you can tell me about what the seller's looking for that would help us make an informed decision on where to come in? Again, you will see us at the closing table. You know, and if they tell you a number that's astronomical, you're going to come in below it anyway. But I find that over the course of, you know, New York City is not always a buyer's market. I've worked in just as many sellers markets. I find that if somebody picks up the phone and asks me, I'm going to have a conversation with them. You know, and if they're telling me that their client's going to get to the closing table, or in New York, if it's a co-op, they have really strong financials, I'm probably going to give them a little bit of information to help them. So, I mean, don't think that it's all blind, you know, silent auction. Nobody knows anything. Guess what? If you're not asking the agent questions, somebody else is. So my advice is ask questions. And, they may say some astronomical number, and you already have a top number that you're willing to go to. So if they're telling you, 850,000 is going to get it done and your top number is 780, you're probably A, not going to get it, or B, come in at 780. I mean, you have to have a top number going into a best and final, in my opinion. There might be somebody else who's very successful in real estate who disagrees with that, but I think you have to have a top number. That's the most important thing going in. And you don't necessarily use your top number right away if you don't think you have to, but you're not going to go above it. In a buyer's market, and I hope I answered that question, it's about conveying that you'll see them at the closing table. And if somebody says that to me, I feel a little bit better, because in hyper aggressive sellers markets, buyers are oftentimes making offers on 10 properties. I don't know if I'm, deciding on the person that's got 9 other offers, but if somebody tells me, we're only making an offer here, that's another way to convey confidence in the seller's seller's agent to use my buyer, or to go with my buyer, is that we're only making offers here. Lots of agents, as you are aware, you're a good agent, lots of agents are making offers all over town. We're only making offers here. If you go with us, you will see us at the closing table. It's the best thing you can do. In a buyer's market, for the buyer, instead of saying we are only making offers here, this is the one property we want, you're saying the opposite. You're saying, as you know, there's a lot of inventory, there's a lot of options right now. We're narrowing down our options, but they do like this property. We see value up to 1.6. If they can get it in the range that they perceive value, they're willing to move forward. Willing to. You see how different it is? When you're representing a buyer in a seller's market, we're laser focused on this property. We want this property. When you're working with a buyer in a buyer's market, it's, there's a lot of fish in the sea. We're not looking to settle down just yet, but you're saying we do have eyes for you. We do like this property and we see value up to here. For a seller in a buyer's market, that's where it becomes a little tougher. What I always like to say, again, if you're making a list of catchphrases, this is one of my best catchphrases. I beat up my seller for you. I did a lot of the negotiating up front. They wanted to price it at 1.2. I got them down to $1,050,000. So we've done a lot of the negotiating up front. That's one way. Identify the strength of your particular micro market. Again, yes, it is a buyer's market, but this area, if you'll notice, the average days on market are 35 versus 80 for the entire market. The average price per square foot is 1,800 versus the rest of the market is 1,400. You're trying to convey strength in your particular market, and you'll say another catchphrase, my seller knows the market and will transact accordingly. My seller knows the market and will transact accordingly. We're not giving it away. My seller knows the market and will transact accordingly. Dealing with concerns, use stories of success, take the pressure off the person. You're not like, hey, dummy, do 6%, 5% gets less traffic. You're not saying, hey, dummy, don't use the local expert. You're saying, you want someone who understands that the market is fluid, pricing is dynamic, and the market is broad. Staging, you're not saying everybody knows staging is important. They pretty much figured that out on HTV 20 years ago. Do not watch TV. No, you're saying, I had this person that did an $11,000 paint job. Because of that, they got a $200,000 bump in the price. You're telling a story of success. You're taking the pressure off of them, showing them the way. One of the hardest objections or concerns is family or friend. Family or friend. That is tough. That is really tough. So you go in and they say, oh my God, Seth, really enjoyed, meeting you, and really seems like you understand the market, but my husband has a cousin who has a real estate license and said they'd do it for 4%, and told us, you know, a price $300,000 higher than you. You know, if we could, we'd go with you. And we know her price is wrong. We do like the 4% commission, but you kind of explained to us why offering a full commission makes sense. But, you know, we can't ostracize and, you know, lose this family member. What can we do? Or sorry, we can't work with you. And I'll say, as a last resort, my business is about 40% referral based. So if you guys have any, you know, sellers or buyers in New York City, I would be so happy to work with them. So I'm used to paying referral fees. So what did I start doing recently? I started saying, instead of losing, you know, I told you I fight tooth and nail for my commission, but this is one time. I'll say, can I create a win-win for you? I will give your cousin a 25% commission, piece of my side of the commission, for doing nothing. For doing nothing, and they avoid the stress, the potential strain of the relationship. If they, you know, you told me they don't do too much business, I would say that it's probably going to turn out to be something that's going to create negative tension between you. So I'm paying them and helping them avoid negative tension, and I'm giving you the possibility to have a true expert get the maximum results that the market will bear. So I don't like giving away my commission, but I'm used to paying referral fees, and I'm 100% willing to do that when I reach a dead end. When I hit that brick wall, that's not $1.5 million view, it's literally a brick wall, I turn around and offer 25% referral fee, because guess what? At the end of the day, business begets business, and that's inventory that will lead to more buyers and more sellers. Be creative. Just because it's not been done doesn't mean that it won't work. In New York City, we have a mansion tax that starts at $1 million, actually New York State, but a joke in New York City is that it starts at 1 million. 1 million can be a studio in a luxury building. 1 million can be a co-op 1-bedroom. 1 million can be a walk-up that faces a brick wall. It's not a mansion by any means, but what I started to do is, if anything had a value between 1 million and 1.1, I told my seller, let's offer to pay the mansion tax. Put it in the first line of the description on the MLS. What are we doing? We're taking it off the table, but we're also conveying that it's going to trade above 1 million, because people kept trying to get properties that were priced at 1,075,000 for 995. To save themselves 10 million, they wanted us to come down 80,000, unequal trade. So what I say to my sellers is, let's bump up the price 20,000, offer to pay the mansion tax, and you're going to net more. It's about what you net, it's not what you spend. Offer to waive the mortgage contingency 2% instead of 10%. In New York City, we work with a lot of developers. New development in New Jersey, you've got developers who put up 20 houses, right? Developers don't want to come down in price. A resale doesn't care about the price, because they sell and they leave the neighborhood. They sell and they leave the apartment building. A developer has 100 units, lowers the price on the first one 15%. Guess what? The whole building goes down 15%. So what we do is we try to be creative with the developer. We say, you know, you pay the transfer tax. Give us a garage that's worth $200,000. Give us a $400,000 decorator credit so you can keep the optics of your price. So you can ask a developer in New Jersey, you pay our taxes for 3 years, we'll let you keep your price. You give us a decorator credit, we'll let you keep your price, because then they get to use that as a benchmark for other properties. And when you sell, you have a higher point of entry that people eventually, when people say to their agent, oh, what did they pay? You paid more than you actually paid. So it comes back to help you later. I'll tell one last story, and then I'll open it up to any quick questions. But I went to India in 2008 to my good friend's wedding. One of the creators of Vitamin Water was at the wedding, and my friend said he's looking for an apartment in New York up to $10 million. Especially in 2007, $10 million was crazy. There weren't that many properties like that in New York. Now you hear of things, well, not now, but you hear of things selling for 40 million, 50 million. 10 million was a really amazing price point at the time. And I think my highest sale up to date at that point was probably 4.5 million. So this guy had a $10 million budget. I was pretty excited to talk to him. My friend gave me a little inside information. He's working with an agent in New York City currently, but you know, it's a 5-day wedding. Seth, I know your power of persuasion. I think you can figure it out. So it's an Indian wedding. I kept trying to dance over to him, see if I can get near him at the bar. Just never really worked out for the first 2 days. Finally, the third day, I next to him, you know, maybe at the bar or at the buffet, I don't even remember at this point. And I said, hey, you know, I'm also one of Sumesh's best friends. I hear you're one of his best friends. They both grew up in Africa and in the same area. And I said, you know, I'm also one of his best friends. I'd love to talk to you. I heard that you're looking for real estate in the city. What are you looking for? He's like, yeah, I'm looking in mostly Tribeca, West Village, Chelsea, up to 10 million. I need 2 real master suites and then a 3rd guest room. I need views. And I'm working with an agent. And I was like, who are you working with? He told me. I was like, oh, he's awesome. Great agent. He's super busy. Really busy guy. I know this because I know that he doesn't have a team and he handles so much business, and he actually pulls agents from the office to show his properties and to show his buyers. And this is actually true. So I had some inside information, but I started by saying he's a great agent. He's just a little busy, really busy. Me, if I worked with you, you would be my #1 most important client. I've never sold at 10 million. I've sold at 3, I've sold at 4. It's not that different a process, but guess what? You're going to be my most important client. You're probably not his most important client. So we come back to New York. He's working with me now. We go to a new development, 2007, crazy market. Just for, you know, these aren't exact numbers, but just for ease, it's a $10 million property. We have to offer full ask. He has to put 15% deposit down because that's how aggressive the market was. $1.5 million down payment. 2008, the building's still not done. Late 2008, the economy crashes. He is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He'd rather lose his $1.5 million than to spend 10 on an apartment that he perceives is worth 7 or 7.5. And I said to him, you know what? In New York, we don't renegotiate contracts that are signed, especially ones that are signed for 1.5 years. But in this particular case, you're buying the penthouse. If you pull out, it sets a bad spiral for this developer. Let me get them on the phone and see if we can get concessions that would make you satisfied with moving. So we got the price lowered from 10 to 9. We got $1 million for decorator and construction credit. We got a garage spot, which was a $500,000 parking spot in Tribeca. We basically adjusted the price down 30%, even though the market only dropped at that point. I mean, it was probably at the worst in New York at that price point, 17%, 18%. We got it 30% off because we were creative. Just because other people haven't done it doesn't mean it can't be done. I mean, negotiation, as long as it's legal, as long as it's honest, use all the tools at your disposal and be creative. I mean, nobody renegotiates contracts that are signed. They pull out of them and then they fight for the down payment. We decided to open it back up and try to renegotiate and keep the optics for the developer. And with that, I am done. Any questions?
No questions?
That means I did. That means I did well.
I hear somebody. I think it's Susan.
I said I just wanted to say thank you very much. It was just great. Thanks.
Thank you. I appreciate that. This is my favorite part of the business. I could give up all the rest of the business and just negotiate, which means listing pitches, listing
I have a
presentations.
question.
closing the deals.
I have
Yeah.
a question. I wanted to hear that formula about the marketing pulse. Hi, Seth. Jean Rawls, how are you?
Good. How are you, Gene?
I'm great, thank you. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about that formula that you went over regarding the
Okay, sure. So I work market pulse, the market pulse. So I work with a lot of finance guys, and they were always asking me for a market score. And basically, it's the way that they look at one segment of a market versus against another. So because I had these finance clients, I had to speak to them in finance terms. So the market pulse is, let's say you're looking at 3-bedroom homes in the Chatham School District. Is that right? Did I get that right? Is there a school district in Chatham? Cool. You're looking at 3 bedrooms in the Chatham School District. With 3 bedrooms, 3 baths. So you'll pull all that inventory and you'll see how many of those active listings are in contract. So if there's 100 on the market and 28 are in contract, you divide 28 by 100 and you get 28%. So the market pulse is 0.28. And then you'll look so let's say they're selling a 4-bedroom home in Short Hills that has a market pulse of 75. You could say to them, this is the perfect time to downsize and move to Chatham now that your kids are out of school, because you're selling something that has 76% in contract and you're moving to something that has 24% in contract. So you can help people make decisions that are good for them by showing them areas of opportunity that aren't just, I say this a lot, it's one of my catchphrases, painting with wide brushstrokes. We can't do that. We have to be very precise because, Chatham, Short Hills, Summit, they're not all the same market at the same time. So if somebody's kids are off from school and they don't care about school district anymore, maybe they sell their house in Summit where all the people that are moving out of the city that want to get their kids into that school district are feeding frenzy for, but there's opportunity in the other area where the school district's not as good and they don't care. So you could have that intellectual conversation with them without the market stats, but now you could drive it home by saying, look, this area with and Chatham might have a better school district. I don't know. I'm from Long Island and I've lived in New York City for 20 years. I don't know what the school districts are, but let's say there's another area
great school system.
That school district is not as good. And their kids are off at college and you can help them find an area where it's lower competition, but it doesn't matter for them because their kids aren't in school. So it's pending divided by active.
Perfect, thank you.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure everybody's doing well. We're kicking butt here in the Northeast. I'm very proud of my city right now.
One last question, if you don't mind, Seth.
Yep.
I'm hearing a lot of people. I've been in the business over 30 years, and now more than ever, I'm hearing a lot of buyers and sellers talking about resisting certain areas due to taxes, which we have no control over.
Mm-hmm.
So my response usually to them is, and I live in Plainfield, I live in historic Plainfield, we pay ridiculous taxes.
Mm-hmm.
My response is normally, we can do nothing about taxes. I mean, there's an appeal process, there's an abatement. We can do nothing about process, but what I can do for you is have you purchase at the right price. That I can do for you.
That's exactly.
But I'm not heard it as intensely as I'm hearing it now. Any comments on that?
I would say if you want such and such type of property in this area, this is the reality that we're dealing with. Are you representing the seller or the buyer in this scenario? Because if I'm representing the seller, I would say you get what you pay for. There's a reason that the taxes are high, but there's also an equilibrium where price and taxes, they find a balance. And we're in the market, and your price here that we're advertising is lower than we would be advertising if the taxes were here. But if I'm working with a buyer, I would say, if it's really important for you to be in this area, then it's really important for us to find value. And we know the taxes are high. So what we need to do is make sure that we get the price in a place where those taxes and the price create a value. But I get a lot of buyers that don't want in New York City, condos have taxes and common charges like an HOA, and co-ops have maintenance, which is basically the HOA plus the taxes. And what I always say is, if you want this is one of those questions I would ask in the beginning. Is it about your monthly nut? Is that what's important? What your outlay is per month? Or, is it important that we have low monthlies? Because if we're getting low monthlies on a property that's equal to something with high monthlies, the price is going to be up. So I just want you to be aware that it all comes out in the wash, but some people would rather pay a little bit more and have lower monthlies, and some people, it doesn't matter to them as long as it's here. So what's important to you? Again, you're tapping into their motivation, you're asking questions. They're making the decision, not you. Never make the decision for them. Yeah.
Hi, Seth. This is Deborah. I have two questions. One is, when you're on the listing side and you have multiple offers, you never disclose the number of offers you have, even if the agent asks?
If they ask, it depends. I'm not trying to push people away. So if it's an agent that I know and they're not going to accept my answer of we've got, a fair amount of offers, we don't know what it's going to wind up with, because we do have a deadline of 5 o'clock on Thursday. So I will just tell you that there's a lot of interest. We do have offers. The door is still open. I would encourage you to make an offer, because we're looking at a, multitude of factors, a variety of things when we're making the decision. So I really encourage you to make an offer. But if it's somebody that's not accepting that offer, that answer, I'll say at this point, I can tell you we have more than 3 offers. I'm never going to tell them exactly how many offers we have. I'm tipping my hand. I'm also pushing them away. If I have 12 offers, I'm going to tell them, I'll tell you, we do have more than 3 offers. I would never tell someone we have 12 offers, because that's going to make the 13th person run for the hills. If I tell them that we have multiple offers and I can tell you it's more than 3, guess what? That 13th person is going to jump in. You're playing, I look at it like you're playing poker. Why would you show your cards? You could play your hand stronger than it is or weaker than it is, but you wouldn't, you're trying to maybe signal that you're stronger than you are, or trying to, I don't know why you would ever signal you're weaker than you are, but I would never say we have 12 offers, just because, like I said, you're trying to tell people the water's warm, come on in. You're not trying to say, oh, the hot tub's full. So, that's just my, that's my perspective on it. Somebody else who's better than me in real estate might have a different opinion, or more successful than me might have a different opinion. But I have found that by, not telling people that I have 10 offers, I get more offers.
My second question is, what do you say to buyers who lost many opportunities, many houses in multiple offer situations? They are discouraged at this point.
Again, I would first and foremost stay calm, and say, this is what happens in a hyper-aggressive seller's market. Remember in the beginning, because it's not going to be a surprise, because we spoke about it in the beginning, you may lose multiple offers before you find your opportunity. Just because other people, this is what I would say, just because other people are willing to overpay doesn't mean I'm going to let you do that. I'm going to stay with you until we find a property where you get good value. And I encourage you to keep at it until we find good value, because your goal is to find a property, and my goal is for you to get it at the right price.
Okay, great. Thank you.
But again, like, I can't stress this enough. It's not a surprise to them because we've talked about it in the beginning.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. Good.
It was really great. I mean, in the chats, you can see everybody is just, you know, super thankful and really, she's in the yard already, really found a lot of value in the things you're saying, Seth. So super appreciate it.
My pleasure. And I have not looked at the chat, but I'll take your word for it.
It's a lot of wonderful. I can't wait to read the recording. This is awesome. Thanks so much. I took so many notes. I mean, it's good.
Okay.
It's really
thank you very much. I really enjoy this, and I hope it comes across and it's helpful to you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think even just your, you know, staying calm, number one, and is huge, and choosing your words, right? And playing, we always talk about playing nice in the sandbox, right? You want to be nice to your co-op agents because, you know, you want to work with them, and you have to let them know it's going to be worth their while if they can do it.
100% exactly. You're going to be doing deals with these people. If you're in the business for a long time, Gene, 30 years, you've done deals with the same people a few times. I mean, they're going to want to do deals with you if they've had
Many times, yeah. Yep. It's all referral.
Yeah, it's repeat, and you know, you might not even like an agent, but you know, be nice to them. So there are plenty of agents I don't like in New York City, but they don't know that I don't like them. All right, guys. Well, stay safe.
Thank you again. Hope to see you soon.
You guys in real life soon enough.
Yes.
All right. Be well.
Thanks, everybody.
All right, bye.
Take care.
Thank you.